So this is part 2 of our confidence intervals built around proportions. So I want to remind you what the purpose of a confidence interval is to capture something true, a true value from the population. Obviously, we're talking about proportions, so we're talking about capturing a true percentage or a true proportion from a given population. Well, one aspect every confidence interval has, and where they get the word confidence, is there's a level of confidence that is associated with every confidence interval. And the three most common are 90, 95, and 99%. Let me give you a scenario to think through before we get into those details. So imagine, back to my question, if you were to guess how much money is in my wallet, and I'm giving you three choices. If I said I have somewhere between $24 and $26, or between 20 and 30, or between 5 and 45, which of those intervals are you most confident contains the exact amount of money in my wallet? So before we answer that, I hope you're thinking about your answer. Let's rewrite each of those intervals in their other form. What is the point estimate of this first interval? In other words, what was my original guess is the number in between 24 and 26? 25. So what was my give or take number? The wiggle room I gave was very small. I gave myself $1 wiggle room. 25 plus or minus $1. So let's think of the next one. My estimate, my point estimate, my best guess was also $25. But I gave myself a little more wiggle room. I gave myself $5 on either side of that. The last interval, same guess. I'm assuming I have $25 in my wallet, but I've given myself a lot of wiggle room. $20 up or down. So let's ask the question again. If I'm guessing I have $25 in my wallet, but I'm not exactly sure, and I give myself some wiggle room, plus or minus 1, plus or minus 5, or plus or minus 20, which one do you feel most confident contains the exact amount in my wallet? And it turns out it's the one with the widest interval, the one where I give myself most wiggle room where it could be. Think of it as trying to capture something with a net. There's a very tiny net up here. This is a large net, and I'm trying to capture the one true value. So, with this set of three examples, I have my least confidence up here, and I have my most confidence down here. Well, it looks like having a large margin of error is what gives you most confidence, and that's true. The problem is, when I say I have somewhere between $5 and $45 in my wallet, that's quite a range, and that's not giving you much information. I kind of liked the first answer. It's very specific. I've zoned in on what I really think is true, but I could be way off. I might not have captured the truth. So there's this balance between I really want a small margin of error, but I also want a lot of confidence. So if I were to give you one takeaway from this, is any of these three, 90, 95, 99, those are high levels of confidence. But the best way to get the smallest margin of error is to always get a large sample in. If you get a large sample size, that is your best way to reduce your error and still maintain a high level of confidence. So to get a large sample size is the best way to achieve a small margin of error. Okay, so let's look at one of your examples that you'll see in your homework. So let's start with this question. or this concern. Let's say we want to know the population proportion. Remember, that's just the letter P without a hat. The population proportion of people who answer yes to some question. So how do I do that? We've always said it's nearly impossible to get your hands on an entire population, so what do? We settle for a random sample. So let's say I was able to get my hands on 964 people in my population, and 527 said yes. So what's the first thing we're going to do is create the sample proportion, p hat. That is what we call my point estimate. That's going to get us close to the truth. So how do I get p hat? We take the number who said yes, divide it by the size of my sample, and with my calculator nearby, let's round this answer to 4 decimal places. 0.54. Let's just go 3 decimals. How about 547? So what do we know? What this is telling me is my sample, 54.7% said yes. Can I say that's what the entire population would say? No, but it's a good place to start. It's a good guess. That's why it's my point estimate. So how do we get the rest of the confidence interval? And this is where your calculator finally comes in. There is a formula that will do this for us, but we're going to go right to the machine and see what it can do for us. So with your calculator on, start by hitting the Stat button. And so I'll make sure you can see that. From here, I want you to arrow all the way over to the Tests menu, and then scroll down until you see choice A. What we're doing is what's called a 1 proportion Z interval. Choose that, and from here you have a very friendly screen. How many people said yes? 527. How big was the sample? 964. And this is where you tell it what level of confidence you want. And you'll know this by what the question gives you in your homework. It's typically 90, 95, or 99. And so I just entered 95, go down to calculate, and within half a second, you are given the final interval. So I'm going to write that to 3 decimal places. So here is what we're calling my 95% confidence interval. And I'm reminding you we went to 1 prop Z interval in my calculator. I believe that was choice A. And to 3 decimals, we got 0.515, comma 0.578. Notice I'll bring my calculator back up. Not only does it give that interval, it tells me what p hat was right below there. We already knew it was 0.547. So I'm going to write this interval in its other format. I already knew my point estimate was 0.547. You could have also found that by taking the average of those 2 numbers. Add those 2 together and divide by 2. But how do I get my margin of error? Well, this is pretty friendly. Now that I know the number in the middle between these two, just take the highest one, 578, and subtract 547. So let me do that off to the side. 0.578 minus 0.547, and we get a margin of error of 0.031. So there's all the parts. The final thing we need to be able to say is, could you make a meaningful sentence out of what this confidence interval is saying? And here's what we can say. We are 95% confident the population percentage. I like to use the word percent in my sentence, but if you still said proportion, that's okay. But then I like to write the percentage. The population percentage is between 51.5 and 57.8.